Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Interplay podcast with your host today, Tere Zorich. We had a bit of a different intro. I realized I clicked on the wrong countdown. So we do not have our beautiful Interplay music this time around, but we got something a little peppy, so that's nice. Our guest today is Sophie. Sophie Spiral Schultz Allen, she, is a dancer, dance researcher, interplay facilitator, and dance studies PhD candidate at the Free University Berlin. In these spaces, Sophie explores ways in which we can deepen our connection to Earth and build reciprocal, regenerative relationships. Sophie became a certified interplay leader in 2017 after completing the Arts and Social Change for Millennial Leaders training. Connect with Sophie on Instagram at Sophie Spiral and online www.sophiespiral.com. Welcome, Sophie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes. Could we start with an interplay form of I Could Talk About, a few rounds of those?
I love it.
Okay, great. I could talk about the ocean and being by her very recently.
I could talk about how we start every board meeting with I could talk about.
I could talk about just being at the BIPOC retreat for Interplay and how on the shuttle back with Masanko, Olivia, Natty, Karen, and I, we did a round of I Could Talk Abouts just to close out our time together.
So good. I could talk about a whole list of things that happened in my week.
I could talk about really appreciating when interplayers have the shared language of I Could Talk About, just so I can get stuff off the top of my head.
I could talk about a workshop I led in the botanical gardens in Berlin this week.
Well, let's get into some questions. Is there anything you want to share about this garden workshop that you did?
Yeah, I mean, it was a magical moment for me to start bringing interplay more and more into the academic setting where I am. And also to be leading interplay in outdoor setting, which I have done many times, but the botanical gardens is also, especially, I don't know, with the German regulations, you're not allowed to like do sports and things. So, but it was so great because we were all aware of this and still we were like, okay, we found our little corner. We're going to do our little interplay thing here.
Beautiful. Some interplay disruption.
Exactly.
Nice. Have you brought, you said you're just starting to bring interplay into these academic spaces that you're in. Is that something that you're wanting to do more of? Is that like a weaving that you're wanting to continue?
Yeah. I love that you use the word disruption because actually the research project that I'm a part of is about intervention. So arts that intervene in our kind of given systems. So yeah, it was definitely emerging of using interplay also as a way to kind of intervene in whatever these regulatory systems are in the botanical gardens, but also intervening in our own like understanding of how to engage and be in a place and to be also with the plants.
It's interesting. I really like this word disruption. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. And it's interesting to find within like the space of embodiment. Because to me, I think of disruption as being in a space and like in a social setting, like somewhere you're not supposed to be. But then I think of embodiment as like somewhere you're supposed to be, like you're supposed to be in your body. So just that like how that can coexist at the same time. The interpersonal, the personal relationship you have with yourself, and then what it means to relate to others in a way where you are not supposed to be doing something.
Yeah. But our bodies have also learned practices over time that we might want to disrupt.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Any that
there's
come to
layers.
mind?
Um, I mean, I think there's also a lot of ways to just become more aware, first of all, of like how our bodies react to certain things, how we might just have learned to, yeah, be still in certain moments and not speak up for fear of being excluded, for example, or ways in which we've learned to like hold tension and not really know how to let it go.
Mhm.
Um, and let's see if there's another example.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm sure more will come up. Obviously, yeah, issues around race and racism can also be very embodied experiences. So
Mhm.
yeah, those are also uh, kind of systems or patterns that we want to look at and understand better.
Mhm. I want to read a bit from your website. It says, quote, Sophie sees embodiment as a connective practice that can serve as a pathway towards collective liberation and healing from ecological destruction and social injustice, end quote. Can you expand on what you see as the importance of centering the body in social justice work?
Yeah, it's really lovely when I tell people like that I'm writing a PhD about environmental justice issues and dance, and they're like, "How does that fit together?"
Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, the more and more I dig into it, I'm just like, how is this not a main part of our understanding? But, we're
Mhm.
getting there, I guess. Um, and yeah, I started thinking about the term connection or connective practice. What are the ways? Because I started reading books like by authors Charles Eisenstein or Bell Hooks or Vandana Shiva. These are people who speak about kind of have written about environmental issues as they relate to social justice.
Mhm.
And they've all pointed to the fact that, um, at least now in the 21st century, but it's been for a long time, kind of since industrialization emerged, that we started to understand ourselves, at least in the Western kind of Eurocentric positionality of how we are separate from the earth.
Mhm.
And yeah, and there are a lot of like beautiful embodiment practices, somatics, and interplay that are trying to reconnect also this separation between mind and body. And so I'm just drawing the correlation between those two, uh, yeah, frames of thought or lines of thought. Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. A question that we like to ask our guests on this podcast, I think fits well here. How do personal embodiment practices, such as interplay and other somatic modalities, contribute to a deeper understanding of yourself?
It always starts with a breath. Like when I breathe, I'm experiencing again how I'm connected to everything that's around me. And I do feel like I am learning more and more about the importance of first tuning into myself, or how also tuning in with another being could help me, connect. Like I do have moments where connecting with a tree will help me connect with myself, but it's both are somehow practices of tuning inward and yeah, trying to sense like what do I need in this moment.
Mm,
And I think, yeah, there are a lot of aspects, at least of the cultures that I grew up in, where people tend to blame things that are around them, or first care for other people's needs before their own. that's valid for sure, and I've benefited from that, but I'm also realizing, like, okay, I have to put my own mask on first before I put on other people's masks.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, Grace Lee Boggs also is a social activist who really was talking about, like, yeah, I just the more and more I'm learning, like, okay, we need both. We need to be centered in our own bodies as well as acknowledging that we need each other and we need to be in the collective
mhm.
to grow.
Yeah, yeah.
So embodiment is really an important way. I mean, in interplay, we do say like the group body. So there's ways to tune into my kind of individual body and then also to tune into the group body or the collective sort of body.
Yes. When and how did you decide that you wanted this to be your life's work?
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like, okay, it's just beginning. Um, yeah, I'm on this spiral journey. It just continues to take me in certain directions that I can't always foresee.
Mm,
But I was thinking today about how when I think about like where did I start dancing or where was my first connection to dance, my mom sometimes will tell the story that I came out of the womb dancing, like I was doing a hand dance, basically like coming out of the womb, being like, "Hello, world." My sister apparently was talking a lot, like made up, baby language.
yeah.
I was very quiet and I just was doing things with my hands and was like, this world is different.
Mm,
So and it was during so I've always danced since I can remember, and my mom supported that, or my whole family kinda supported that, although I don't think I saw it as like a unfortunately, I didn't totally see it as a viable way to, like, make a living.
mhm,
And I continued to dance in college, I was taking classes, I was performing even, but it wasn't till the very last semester and also during my study abroad where I started to realize how dancing was also a really important way for me to connect with other people. So, for example, when I was abroad and I was in places where I didn't speak the local language, dance became an even more important way for me to connect and feel some sense of belonging and connection and like I needed that a lot, and I think after that experience, I became more and more, aware of my that passion and the importance that dance plays in my life, and that's when I then found interplay, just
mm,
that kind of awareness came up.
yeah. How
Uh,
did you find interplay?
yeah, it was a combination of a friend from college and then who was also, in the Bay Area, and then, my elementary school dance teacher is Shoyinka Rahim, so we, like,
Wow.
ran into each other at the bank, I think it was. But, like, just doing our errands in Berkeley,
Wow.
and yeah, it was really nice to see each other, and then, yeah, she also told me about Interplay, and I was like, "Uh-oh, 2 people told me about Interplay." And the
Wow.
Arts and Social Change, program was happening that summer right when I got back, and I really was, like, not sure about what I was gonna be doing,
Mm,
looking for opportunities and work and trying to figure out life as an adult, for
mhm,
the first time.
mm,
And that's when I found Interplay, and it was such I did the 2-week arts and social change program and got connected to all these other folks my age who were passionate about, trying to find a way that our arts and creativity and, yeah, our kindred spirits could be, making some kind of a impact in the world, I guess, and it
mhm,
felt really reassuring in that moment to realize, okay, we're all going through sort of this, I mean, it's, yeah, hardship in some ways, but just exploration and confusion around how to make that happen.
Mhm.
And it was a very supportive space, to feel like, okay, there are ways to go about this, and Interplay really gave me tools that I could use right away. I was like, this is so nice. I don't have to invent it all myself. Someone's already been working on it for quite a while.
Yes.
And that makes it much more tangible to start seeing myself as someone who could facilitate these sorts of things with other people. And it really empowered me to just give it a try, even though I was pretty, yeah, unsure of how to go about it.
Mm. Um, Part of what you shared reminds me of some wisdom from organizer Miriam Kaba. And she talks about, like, if you're passionate about an injustice, then one of the first steps you want to take is finding other people who are already doing this work.
Yeah,
Because we never have to reinvent the wheel. Like,
yeah,
life has been happening. So it's beautiful that you were able to find that in Interplay and in that space.
yeah,
Can you share where, like, how you chose Spiral as a name for yourself?
yeah. Um, it emerged when I was experiencing moments of kind of creative block, or I love how Ade called it the creative constipation. um, that was in a previous episode, if anyone is curious. And I think yeah, was needing to just kind of free myself creatively, or start to figure out, okay, how do I just get started somewhere? And at the time, I had more of a visual art practice than I do now, but I mean, I still do.
Mm,
And yeah, it really freed me to just like try to fill sketchbook pages. Um, and one of the things that kept coming was the pattern of spirals. So I just would, like, put a dot on the page and just, that was a start. And then I would keep going, and usually something else happened. And even if it wasn't on that page, like the spirals was sort of like a portal into being able to access my creativity. So then the next page, something else would happen, and then it wasn't necessarily all spirals, but that really became, um, just a support for me, yeah, and it started to become a metaphor for the way that I wanted to live my life, and to trust that I would, find a way forward or backwards, or, yeah,
mm,
feeling like movement is happening. It's not necessarily going in a closed loop. I'm kind of maybe breaking out of some certain cycles. Uh,
mm.
and yeah, it has this dynamic shape that can also go many ways. Also, when I was a kid, I would draw the S with spirals on it. So it's not totally out of the blue. Like, I think that they also have been with me for maybe even longer than I can remember.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you almost gave yourself like this symbolic assurance that you can return to whenever you need to, just to continue on the path that you're on.
Yeah.
Maybe not knowing what the next step is. You've spoken a couple times about like this feeling of uncertainty that you've had, and
Mhm.
just still choosing to make your way.
Mhm.
So that's great to hear.
Yeah.
I can relate.
And of course, many other meanings to the spiral have emerged since then, right? So
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
it's maybe not surprising, but there's also a whole practice called the work that reconnects by Joanna Macy.
mm,
Um, and that is also about environmental activism work, and they have a format, or the main practice is also the spiral shape.
Mm,
So, I mean, I learned about these things kind of, I don't know, I guess in the years following that I really got attached to this name. And yeah, so it's amazing how somehow we kind of align ourselves with something, and it helps us find the things that maybe we were meant to find anyway.
yes. Yeah. I know you have, besides your visual art, I know you are also a poet. I don't know if you think of yourself as a poet, but I saw a really beautiful poem on your website that I would love for you to read for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'm sort of an undercover poet. Most of them I haven't shared publicly. But yeah, so this is one that I wrote a while back. Actually, here it says 2022, but I know I wrote it earlier. I think probably 2019 I have in my memory. It's called a Queer Rainbow Poem. And in my sketchbook, actually, there's a kind of a painting or drawing that goes alongside it, but I didn't manage to pull that out for now. But you
Mhm.
can imagine that there's definitely a rainbow of colors. Here I go. Queer like the rainbow. My body expands, made of the earth, only my heart can understand. My eyes blue like the ocean, skin like the sand, hair like red dirt. The rivers of blood branch out through my body like the valleys and mountains they carve. Through land and sea, I am earth. My queer body is earth, here to build a bridge to the renewed earth. Thank you.
Beautiful. I'm also queer. Can you share just how your queerness impacts your understanding of your work, of the earth, of the world, anything around that?
Yeah, it's also Pride Month. Woo woo.
Yes. Woo.
Um, I love it when the rainbows appear everywhere. It makes me really happy.
Yes.
And then I'm like, "Can they just stay, please?" But maybe it's also super exciting, um, when they get revealed. Uh, yeah, there's, like, many layers to this, but mostly queerness has also become really connected to this feeling of being part of the earth, and, trying to just understand, again, unlearning maybe this disconnectedness, unlearning the binaries that are so present, in the sort of mainstream societies, trying to see things more as a spectrum,
Mm,
essentially. So whether that's gender or sexuality or race or like, I don't know, mushrooms existing. But, yeah, everything is sort of, or even, like, beyond spectrum, like 3D spectrums, that really go out in all directions, kinda like my light here.
mhm. Yes.
And, yeah, I've felt really limited by being told that I'm a woman, or that, what all the things that, I mean, I try to reclaim it in the ways that I can for myself, becoming a witch, things like
Mm,
this, reclaiming, the magic and medicine, herbalist aspects of myself. But I in no way see those things as being even limited to a female body or whatever. We can have witches can be of all genders, and herbalists, of course, as well. And so, yeah, it's really about expanding these sort of categories and learning how to be with other humans in a way that's also more expanded in terms of identity, and allowing, yeah, ourselves to feel the flexibility and the freedom of that, and to empower each other along the way to try out different things, to because yeah, there's just so much love, I think, to give and receive in the world, and these categories usually just function to kind of like cut off that love, and that for me is such a waste of resources and energy.
Mhm.
um, so yeah, for me, queerness is about sharing love. It's about loving myself however I am today or tomorrow, and feeling kind of brave enough, and empowering others to also be brave to explore and maybe expand and try something different, in
Mm,
order to just be in that flow of love as much as we can.
mhm. Um, I feel like this this word, this bravery, like bravery, I feel like is so important right now.
Yeah.
And it feels important to choose bravery and to be able to embody that when it comes to our collective liberation. You shared that your thesis explores eco dance practices that center decolonial action. What is decolonial action for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, well, anyway, words always have their trends and phases, and it's becoming more, yeah, we just need to keep redefining what these words are.
Mhm,
It's first an acknowledgement that we are still experiencing colonialism on this earth.
mhm,
It's also recognizing the more than 500 years of colonialism that have impacted the way that our societies exist today. There is internal and external colonization. So these are all systems of hierarchy and oppression that are impacting some more than others, but also us as a collective, community, yeah, in different ways. And so the decolonial action is first acknowledging and understanding those systems, and then trying to, yeah, find practices or actions that will work to dismantle them,
mhm,
mostly within, yeah. This comes from, so I'm trying to like situate my academic research within a lineage of both kind of somatic and dance histories, and also environmental justice histories, looking at the ways environmentalist kind of, environmentalisms have also been racist, and
mm,
uh, strategies of colonial powers and certain forms of modern dance or so-called contemporary dance are also utilized as a form of colonial power.
mhm,
Arts in general continue to be, a way to, yeah, I mean, they can be a cultural uh, power, or like, yes, a tool to deem which cultures are more valuable and which ones are not. And yeah, and then there's this interesting intersection where I'm trying to also look at, okay, well, what environmental kind of, or which eco dance practices, are perpetuating even perhaps certain colonial norms, and which ones are actually dismantling them.
mhm, mhm. Do you have any folks you really look up to in these lineages, dance and eco, as you're naming, that you want to share with us?
Yeah, it's not so easy, but I think that our definitions also of what this looks like are can start changing, and somatics are becoming more and more a part of the dance world or dance community.
Mhm.
Someone who I've been learning a lot from, and who also just published a book on grief. It's called Tending Grief. Their name is Camille Sapara Barton, and they're also based in Europe. Um, and they're starting to connect these things as well. Um, the somatic practitioner that I'm researching is based in India,
Mm,
and yeah, his name is Navtej Johar. He also fought against the Indian government, the Supreme Court, in order to decriminalize homosexuality in India.
mm,
So that passed in 2018, and it was a pretty big deal. It was like also one of several remaining pieces of legislature in India remaining from the British colonial rule.
mm,
Um, so obviously, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, gay marriage is not legal in India, but at least to have it decriminalized is huge.
mhm,
And his somatic practices um, are merging also traditional Indian dances, and
mm,
that part is fascinating to me.
mhm,
Um, Also thinking about yoga as an embodiment practice. Um, so yeah, the way that he's bringing these things together. We do a lot of sort of shape and stillness in a sense. There are also some overlaps with interplay that I have noticed. So yeah, I'm curious right now. There's also a person in England doing a workshop called The Ecological Body. Her name is Sandra Reeve. These
mm,
are folks who I've now learned from, and trying to see like, okay, what are the overlaps of these practices? And it's funny when I notice like, this thing kind of correlates to what we do in interplay. Um, so there's definitely a lot of I don't know. It's one of those moments where you're like, okay, this is a body thing.
mm,
This is like a something that kind of crosses some boundaries, some borders, because it is so linked to us as humans.
mhm, mhm. Nice. I'll check out those resources later. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, and I will be writing about them all in my PhD, so
Oh, amazing.
hopefully there will be more details there.
Great. Is that something you'll be sharing on your website or your social media once that's
Yeah, it's
finished?
still gonna take like 2 years probably.
We'll look out for it. 2 years.
Yeah, I'm in the midst of it right now.
Mm. Um, to really hone in on the personal, speaking of like decolonization and um, lineages of knowledge and the knowledge that you're bringing in, can you share if you have any practices using embodiment that you use to understand your own privileges and like the way you show up in the world?
Yeah. Breathing, making sound. Um, Shaking is really a big one. Um, when I arrived, well, no, I guess, yeah, there's a dance place in Berlin called Ponderosa, or it's actually an hour outside of Berlin. I've attended several workshops there, and one of the artists I took a workshop with is called, their name is Swazi Mears Clark. Actually, they might also appear in my PhD, we'll see. But I just also presented a lecture about one of their works. Um, And I took a workshop with Swazi about shaking and shame.
Mm,
And that was a really powerful workshop, and it was a beautiful way of, I think, the simplicity of, okay, what are all the things we can do with shaking? Um, and how can we use it to support each other to deal with moments where we've felt shame?
mhm,
And I mean, I feel like I've heard in many sort of social justice spaces that, shame is just not useful,
mm,
and it's like we should just try to get rid of it. And um, yeah, and I think that people who have privilege probably have also experienced feeling shame, although I guess it's maybe one that correlates to many different folks. But I've definitely felt shame in my life for different reasons. And sometimes it's really collective shame, and other times it, comes in a more individual way. But this workshop was awesome because I mean, Swazi also really connected it to the queer experience,
mm,
um, and that society maybe tries to that make us feel ashamed for being queer, that has kind of functioned as sort of maybe like a policing, a way of policing
mhm,
bodies. And I mean, yeah, I guess it could be, like some sort of collective angst that we must reproduce or whatever. Obviously, we've fulfilled our reproduction
mhm,
um, needs at the moment. But yeah, this shaking was very powerful to think about how I don't need to be kind of imprisoned by the shame that I'm feeling, and that by shaking and being witnessed by someone else also while shaking, I can have an embodied experience of releasing myself of at least some of those feelings of shame.
mhm,
And yeah, in general, when I feel overwhelmed or that I have like too much going on in my system, shaking is a really great way to release. And I think also I identify as being sort of an empathic person. I Generally, it helps me kind of tune into the room and connect with other people, but it also means I have too many things coming in, and sometimes it kind of just fills up all this energy, and it's too much for my system. My nervous system kind of
mhm,
goes overboard. So the shaking again becomes, and I realize that's why I think I need dance also so much. And I'm so lucky that my body actually knows how to dance and knows how to shake, and now I've really given myself permission to do that, and to even, to do it at home alone, but also to do it in public spaces as well, as an invitation for others to do it
mhm,
with.
mhm.
Yeah,
It makes me think of the interplay tool of X formation, which I
exactly.
think is just so wise, so body wise. Um, I think of dogs when I think of shaking. Like they're so good at it. Just like standing up, shaking, stretching it out.
Yeah,
Um,
this was one of the experiences or the examples that Swazi gave us in the workshop, and that wolves, when they were hurt or got in a fight, they would kind of separate themselves from the pack and shake
mm,
as kind of a trauma response.
mm,
And they would essentially I don't know why they needed to separate themselves, but or why they might still do that, but that was their way of kind of healing from a traumatic experience,
mm,
shaking, shaking, shaking until they sort of stopped shaking, and then eventually would go and rejoin.
hmm.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Do you find that with this weaving that you're doing with dance and everything. Do you find animals come up a lot in your studies and in your work?
Yes, although I would say for me it's more plant-oriented
Mhm.
somehow, um, but they're also I mean, they're not the category of animals, but they are definitely beings to me, but yeah, yesterday when we were in the botanical gardens, we saw a fox. That was really beautiful, and the fox kind of led me to my place where I wanted to go and explore, and it was so sweet, like, I just didn't know which direction to go, and then this fox showed up and was walking, and at one point, the fox stops and then it looks over his shoulder and is like, "Are you coming?" So, like, "Okay, I'm coming," but, staying my distance, but, yeah, it's not so uncommon to see a fox in Berlin. They're actually there is a pretty large community of
Mhm.
foxes here. But, yeah, I do feel like I have a lot of, I dream a lot also with animals, and I try to spend a lot of time in the outdoors, and my dad is a huge birder, so I've tried to learn a little bit from him about listening to birds, um, and yeah, in general, and my sister loves animals. We did have quite a lot of pets growing up. We had chickens and dog and guinea pig,
Mm.
but yeah, now my pets are the plants.
Yes. I love this imagery of a fox guiding your way. Um, just thinking of the poem you shared earlier and you talking about your hair and describing it. I see the correlation with the fox and that being
Mhm.
a beautiful guide for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, curiosity is definitely one of my biggest guiding
Mm,
forces. I find that it's really a beautiful opportunity, and it's such a privilege that I get to, spend time following my curiosities and
mhm,
learning to follow those threads and learning to trust, like, what who I meet along the way, how to kind of, yeah, have this engagement with the world through my writing and through these encounters. And yeah, it's like when I open a book, I'm also kind of having an encounter meeting someone and their story. And when I meet a plant, I also get to be curious about, who they are and how they exist. And then also with the animals. And
mhm, mhm.
yeah, I guess I usually wait for them to kind of come to me,
Yeah.
and I try to, be present and listen as much as I can when that moment happens.
Mhm. At the BIPOC retreat, Doug led an exercise where we wrote 10 I am statements down on a piece of paper. And then we went through a whole process of like discarding and reclaiming these terms, these phrases for ourselves, these self descriptors. And we ordered them, and I had a tie in first place, but one of those cards said, I am curious. So I relate to that in that being very much a driving force in my life and the way that I approach, try to stay present, like you said, call in, however that looks. And it can look so many different ways.
Yeah, that's what we can really learn from the earth, and try to our best to honor and protect as much as possible this diversity of, existence,
Mhm.
and a need to kind of, yeah, keep being creative and exploring and curious about, yeah, all the ways that we can exist.
Mhm. I had a question for you around just if you have any practices around tending the earth, whether that looks like houseplants, which I see in the background, or gardening
Mm.
or farming. And you mentioned plants. You mentioned these big houseplants you have. Do you want to talk about your relationship to specific plants in your life?
I do. Thank you. I mean, mostly they take care of me.
Mhm.
But it is like I notice I'll start with the houseplants when become a communication with them and attending to, like, learning just to notice when they need care and attention and doing my best to give them water when they need it and to give them a bigger pot when they need more space. Um, and generally, it's somehow attuned to me and how I'm doing.
Mhm.
And I notice when the plants are feeling a bit, sad and droopy, it's like I'm also, uh, a bit overworked or, yeah, feeling exhausted and droopy. And
Mhm.
when I feel like I give myself time to care for them, it's also a way of caring for myself. It gives me time to slow down, um, just to drink water. I give my plants water from my water bottle, so there's,
Mhm.
like, very much a connection there. And the other practice that I have or that grew a lot during the pandemic was, my herbalism practice. Yeah, and starting to learn how to, recognize different plant friends that are growing around me.
Mhm.
I think this kind of emerged also because of, moving and living in different parts of the world where the landscapes look different. Um, and yeah, when I was living in Western Massachusetts, after having lived in California, it started like I would go on hikes or on walks in the forest, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, I only know I don't know. There's a lot of different plants here that I didn't grow up, learning about. And my dad is well, he spent quite a lot of time as an environmental educator, so we would go
Mhm.
on hikes. He would kind of point things out to me and try to teach me about different plants as well. So that practice, I guess, got ingrained in me at an early age.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic, my mom also gave me a book about herbalism, and I started really wanting to learn more about the plants here, and I really see that as part of me being yeah, uh, I mean, yeah, inhabiting or being a part of, like, moving here to Germany and,
Mhm.
learning about the plants is really a way of feeling a sense of belonging in this place, and it really helps me feel more grounded when I go on a walk and I'm like, "Oh, hey, you
Mhm.
know, mugwort friend," or "Hey, nettles," or "Hey, plantains," and yeah, now it's also helps me really tune into the seasons, so we're just seeing the hypericum, the St. John's wort plant that grows here. They have these really bright yellow flowers that usually bloom right around the summer solstice, so it
Mhm.
feels like, the peak of summer is, like, bursting with these beautiful yellow flowers, um, and that was the first plant that I learned how to make medicine with as well, 'cause that was part of it, was figuring out how to deal with the long, dark winters here,
Mhm.
and me being, used to Californian sun and being like, "I'm really depleted of my usual vitamin D."
Yeah.
So, how can I, um, uplift my own spirits to get through these times? And, yeah, the St. John's wort, Hypericum, was that, and, I guess I had taken it as, like, a pill form or something at one point in my life, and I didn't really notice anything from it, and somehow, um, I think about this kind of collecting the flowers myself, doing, like, all the steps, and learning also about how to collect flowers in a way that is going to ensure that there's also enough for everyone else, and also
Mhm.
the bees and the bugs that also need these nutrients and medicine. So yeah, learning about how to be kind of, yeah, aware of the seasons, then knowing, okay, when is the right time to pick, and then how do I do it in a way that yeah, is not extractive, and taking just enough for myself, and then making a medicine in alcohol or vinegar, watching it change color, and then eventually, yeah, having it there on my shelf and taking it and learning how to take it and how to actually even receive this medicine. So there's a whole process, and I think it really, like, in some ways, even just making the medicine as like a project or as something creative to do, in the end, really, I got interested in this whole process of being in relationship with the plant through that practice. So now it's not just about taking the medicine, but it's about, yeah, the whole the whole process.
Yeah, it's not just the final step. It's not just consuming. I like this word too. This word of relation. Um, and just while you were talking, I was thinking about how much it takes, like the effort it takes to learn all of this and to actually go through the process, and how it really does sound like you are like consciously working on building a relationship with these plants. Um, how how do you how do you see I'm trying to like understand or frame a question around reciprocity and how so much of the way we relate to the work, we relate to the earth is extractive.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like reciprocal relationships with the earth?
Well, I was also thinking maybe you would connect it to interplay because there's also
Mm,
a relationship there. Um, but I'll answer that question first, and then maybe it becomes a secondary one.
mm,
Yeah, it's just becoming more and more clear to me that it is about relationships. It is about the way that we relate, and um, reciprocity. The extractivism is just such a one directional way of being in relationship, uh, and it hurts us too. It is not beneficial, as we're seeing all the ways that this destructive kind of practice is having an impact on our earth and on our species, and on other animals. And it ignores that we're all interconnected. Uh, and in that ignoring, yeah, it doesn't see our existence. So if we're interconnected, if our existence is connected to the thriving of the earth, then the extractive economies are essentially just in these like loops of harm. We've
mhm.
been in these cycles of harm, and only a very few people, seem to be benefiting from it, and I don't think they are even
Yeah.
benefiting, because, yeah, they think they are. I don't know how to really I haven't found an eloquent way of explaining that one yet, but
Yeah.
I'm doing my best to understand, how to really signal that is not helping us thrive.
Yes. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're trying to say. And I feel like I've read something somewhere around this as it relates to racism, and saying how like racism is not something that actually benefits white people. It
No.
may seem to in the facade of what, of course, accumulating resources can do, but it's incredibly dehumanizing in different ways.
Exactly. And it cuts, I mean, yeah, the way I can say it from my own perspective is like accumulation, can cut you off from the connection.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, I'm thankful that, yeah, I also come from working class families that still see this kind of appreciation of and also a lot of farmer family. Like most of my German lineage are farmers or bakers. So this kind of or like that's how they also survived through the war, was through making bread or through farming.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, those are practices that connect us to each other, to other people, or to the earth. And
Yes.
yeah, that's the life force that we need to thrive and to feel alive. So if we
Hmm.
don't have that, then um, we're not really like alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you share what you thought the tie-in interplay question was going to be and then answer it?
Yeah. Um, It's a great meta. Yeah, I
Yes.
think what really helped, like, why I fell in love, one of the reasons I fell in love with interplay was my brain that sees metaphors was just like in awe of how when of an interplay session being like um, a microcosm of the wider society,
Mm,
and that of course um, certain ways of relating to each other will get reproduced in an interplay session where we're like, yeah, I was going to bring in one of my favorite forms, following and leading,
mm,
and how, I mean, we do learn to kind of do one or the other. um, And I just really, I think my mind blew open, like, oh, when the activity of following and leading was not about just learning how to do one role, then it was about learning how to do both, which was great because I had, like, tried to dance salsa and was like, I don't really wanna be the follower all the
mhm,
time. And then
mhm.
I would learn to be the leader, and I'd be like, "Well, I still don't wanna be the leader all the time." And
Yeah.
then the interplay is like, okay, so you get to learn how to be the leader, you get to learn how to be the follower, and then the whole point is actually to, like, forget who's leading and who's following.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I really appreciated how that has helped me also become, a leader follower and
Mhm.
a teacher student. Shoyinka Rahim reminds me of that all the time. Being a teacher is also about being a student.
Yes.
Um, and I think that to be a good leader, actually, you have to be a really good follower.
Yes.
You have to listen to, the group that you're trying to lead, or even listen to yourself as part of that group.
Mhm.
Mm. So, yeah, interplay has been, I mean, an important, like, an amazing way for me to tune into myself and yeah, where am I at in this group? But then also to learn about, like, yeah, how to be a leader follower, a follower leader.
Yes. Wonderful.
And to see those practices kind of getting worked out at the collective level.
Mm, very cool.
And yeah, okay, the full circle thing was about reciprocal relationships. So how to be in relationship with each other, and I guess this is the leader following, like how to take up space
Mhm.
when we need to take up space, but also how to step back and to listen to those around us, and to then find a flow that is energetically somehow balanced.
Yes.
So I think reciprocity in the end is also a lot about trying to tune into balance, the push and pull of the way things move in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, interplay has really helped me with that as well, following and leading. I'm noticing that we are this is going to be a relatively longer episode than usual, but it's just been so great talking with you and spiraling into different parts of where we can talk. And I feel like I could keep on talking with you, but I'd like to close with a quote that I found that I thought you would appreciate. Close with a quote, and then if you can just share anything that comes up for you from that quote. And I feel like it's a quote that we could easily go on for another hour talking, but we're going to try to close. So this is from the Emergent Strategy series, and the book is called Liberated to the Bone by Susan Raffo. Quote, "The physical body, this place of individual or original home, is another place of story. It's a connected story, individualized by the boundary of its skin, but also connected deeply from before birth until after death. Everything about the rhythm of the body, its pace of development, its way of holding pain and experiencing pleasure, is a story of relationship. Even the ways the body forgets and isolates, separating and numbing from those around, is a collective strategy. It's one designed for a body among bodies, not a body isolated from all. This community of cells, of membrane and fluid, of expansion and contraction carries so many whisperings and teachings of the before."
Wow. Thank you for bringing that wonderful quote.
Mhm.
Just letting it sink in. Yeah, our skin, this kind of semi-porous boundary layer. It's it just makes me think about the kind of double consciousness, or if you will, of understanding ourselves as this kind of body, but there's so much plurality within us, all the cells and different bacteria. I mean, a lot of, yeah, what's even my body or what's just part of the earth, or yeah, all the other microbacteria that are their own bodies. So yeah, there is the skin, but every time I breathe, I'm reminded that, you know, uh, there's a connection, and I can't really exist without the other elements and beings that are around me.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what does it take to have, to have this understanding that we are really always part of the earth?
Mhm. Mhm. At this point in the quote as well, of speaking about isolation, made me think of what you shared about the wolves and how isolation is a product or a way of relating to others.
Yeah, I guess, but also maybe a fear of being together,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, or yeah, a product of being shamed, or
Mhm.
product of exclusionary practices that are also, yeah, just like cycles of harm.
Mhm.
So how to uh, unwind from those
Yes.
and to reach. I did find a really beautiful book this last week, by another somatic practitioner. It's about coming home to the body is the
Mm.
title, how to come home to the body. And yeah, I just got reconnected to this root of tending,
Mm.
which is to stretch out. from the Latin etymology. And so, yeah, I've been starting to think about, okay, being in a relationship is also about, yeah, maybe if we're in isolation, it's easy to kind of, to pull back, and to somehow stay there disconnected.
Mhm.
And to tend the relationship requires that we stretch out.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, stretching literally, but also like reaching for the other people around us, or also the beings, like the sense of belonging and connectedness that I feel with plants and animals is also really valid and important, and it gives me a different sense of connection than what I have with humans. So yeah,
Yes.
reaching out to all of the life that is around us will help us, I think, enter into more of this reciprocal way of being in relationship.
Mhm. Well, I think that's a beautiful way to end. I think there's much more we could talk about, but maybe we can bring you on for a part two.
I'm excited about all the other guests. I'm so happy the podcast is a reality now.
Yes, it's happening. Thank you so much for talking with me today. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. Your host today was me, Teresa Zorich. I am Interplay's liaison to emerging generations. We are happy that we are a part of your somatic journey as you delve into your own body wisdom. And you can find out more at interplay.org. And we hope you join us for our next conversation. Bye,
Thank you,
Sophie.
Tay. Bye.